My stepsister framed me for stealing our dad's fortune and got him to disinherit me. When I tried to explain, my stepmother slapped me and yelled, "Get out, you thief!" I left with nothing, but she didn't know I had proof of her betrayal. Now, everything she planned to take is about to be mine. Life has a way of revealing people's true colors when money enters the picture. I'm Emma, and this is the story of how my stepsister Sarah's greed destroyed our family, or so she thought. Growing up, I always tried to welcome Sarah and her mother, Linda, into our lives after my father remarried. When they first moved in, I was 12 and Sarah was 14. I still missed my own mother terribly. She had passed away from cancer 2 years earlier. But I wanted to make things work. My father seemed happy with Linda, and I wanted that happiness to last. Sarah, however, never reciprocated my efforts at sisterhood. While she maintained a perfect facade in front of our parents, she made it clear in private that she saw me as competition. "This is my house now," she'd whisper when no one else was around. "And your dad, he's going to love me more than you." I tried telling my father about Sarah's behavior, but Linda always defended her daughter. "Girls will be girls," she'd say with a dismissive wave. "Sarah's just adjusting, give her time." My father, not wanting to rock the boat in his new marriage, would simply encourage me to try harder with my stepsister. As years passed, I focused on my studies and building my own life. I graduated from business school and started working at a financial consulting firm, making my father proud. Sarah, meanwhile, bounced between jobs and relationships, always finding ways to extract money from our parents for her latest venture or crisis. My father's health began declining 3 years ago. What started as occasional fatigue progressed into something more serious. The doctors diagnosed him with a rare form of leukemia, and suddenly our world turned upside down. I immediately shifted to working remotely, so I could help care for him. During those long days at the hospital, I noticed Sarah's sudden increased interest in our father's affairs. She started spending more time in his hospital room, always shooing me away with claims of private conversations. Linda supported this, saying Sarah was finally bonding with her stepfather. What I didn't know then was that Sarah was carefully orchestrating my downfall. One evening, after a particularly long day at the hospital, I returned home to find my laptop missing from my room. I searched everywhere, but it had vanished. When I mentioned this to Sarah, she just shrugged, saying she hadn't seen it. 2 days later, my father called me into his hospital room. His face was ashen, and Linda stood by his bed, arms crossed and glaring at me. Sarah sat beside him, holding his hand, tears streaming down her face. "Emma," my father said, his voice weak but filled with disappointment, "Sarah showed me the evidence." "How could you?" "Evidence? What evidence?" I asked, genuinely confused. Sarah pulled out my missing laptop, opened it, and turned it toward me. On the screen were bank statements showing large transfers from my father's accounts to an offshore account in my name. My heart stopped. These were clearly fabricated, but they looked convincingly real. "I found this when I borrowed her laptop to check my email," Sarah said, her voice trembling with fake emotion. "I couldn't believe my sister would do this to you, Dad." "I had to tell you." "That's not possible," I protested, my voice rising with panic. "Those statements are fake. Sarah stole my laptop. She must have fabricated this." Linda stepped forward, her face twisted with anger. "How dare you accuse my daughter when she's exposed your theft? We raised you better than this." "Dad, please," I begged, turning to my father. "You know me, I would never steal from you. Sarah is lying." But my father's face had hardened. Years of Sarah's subtle manipulation had done their work. And now, in his weakened state, he was all too ready to believe the worst of me. "I've already called my lawyer," he said quietly. "I'm changing my will. I can't trust you with my estate, Emma. Not after this." The room spun around me. Everything I'd worked for, every sacrifice I made, was crumbling because of Sarah's elaborate lie. I tried to explain, to defend myself, but Linda and Sarah had created such a convincing narrative that my protests only seemed to confirm my guilt in their eyes. "Get out," Linda snapped, pointing to the door. "You're no longer welcome here, you ungrateful thief." I looked at my father one last time, hoping to see some doubt, some willingness to hear my side, but he turned his face away. In that moment, I knew I'd lost everything. As I walked out of the hospital room, Sarah followed me into the hallway. Once we were alone, her tears vanished, replaced by a triumphant smirk. "You should see your face," she whispered. "Did you really think Dad would choose you over me? I've been planning this for months, every detail, every document. Perfect, wasn't it? And now, everything that should have been yours will be mine." I stood there, my whole body shaking with anger and disbelief. "Why?" I managed to ask. "I never did anything to hurt you." Sarah's eyes hardened. "Because you existed. Because for years, I had to watch you play the perfect daughter, while I was always second best." "Well, not anymore. I win, little sister, I win." I left the hospital that day with nothing but my purse and my car keys. Linda had already texted me, warning that if I returned to the house, she'd call the police. I checked into a hotel, my mind racing as I tried to process how quickly my life had fallen apart. That night, my father's lawyer called. In a cold, professional voice, he informed me that my father had signed a new will, leaving his entire estate, including the family home, his business shares, and all his investments, totaling roughly $4.8 million, to Sarah. I was completely disinherited. I spent hours staring at the hotel ceiling, replaying every moment, every interaction with Sarah over the years. All her little comments, her subtle manipulations had been leading to this. She'd played the long game, and I'd never seen it coming. But as I lay there, something my father had once told me came flooding back. In business and in life, Emma, he said, always keep proof of your integrity. Sometimes the truth takes time to surface, but it always does. A small smile crossed my face as I remembered something else. Something Sarah didn't know about. My father's old safety deposit box at the bank. He'd given me access to it years ago, and inside was evidence that would turn Sarah's perfect plan on its head. But I had to be patient, let Sarah think she'd won. Let her believe her victory was complete. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge is the one you don't see coming, until it's too late.